In this video, I'm going to set up an interaction with an NPC where you have to give something to an NPC and you'll get something in return. This is a kind of a very common game trope. You have to find the wizard's lost wand and give it to him, and then he gives you some magic sword you can use to somewhere else, right? So that's a way of advancing the story forward. So let's see what we've got here. In this scenario, I've got a computer lab. It's just one room. I have an NPC, me, Mr. Wright. And the description of Mr. Wright is, Mr. Wright appears worn and haggard. And the initial description of Mr. Wright is, Mr. Wright is here tending to his beloved machines. And there's a floppy disk. Ooh, and it's in the player's inventory. I could put something here. It's like a 5 1/4 or maybe 8-inch disc or something. And there's also a gold bar. That's what I'm going to give the player when I get the floppy disk, because apparently I really like floppy disks. And the gold bar starts off screen. So let's just test this and see what we get. There's our little terminal. Computer lab. This is a sprawling computer lab filled with ancient 8-bit computers. Mr. Wright is here tending to his beloved machines. So let's examine Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright appears worn and haggard. Okay, and what are we carrying? We are carrying a floppy disk. All right, so we've got our little game environment set up. So now let's see if we can create an interaction with Mr. Wright here, or the digital incarnation of me. So let's add a function here, and I'm going to call it like give floppy to Mr. Wright. I'm not going to put a period in there because that would probably be misinterpreted as, I don't know, maybe it would work, I don't know. I'm going to click add, give floppy to Mr. Wright. All right, so there's my function. So what happens when we give the floppy disk to Mr. Wright? I don't know, then maybe I give you the gold bar or something. So let's just print a line here. Mr. Wright says, okay, now you can't use double quotation marks, so I'm just going to use a single quotation mark here. Wow, thanks. I was looking for one of those. All right, close, single quotation mark. Okay, and then so what do we do with the floppy disk now? Let's move it out of the world. Floppy disk dot holder equals off screen. So it's, oops, that's OF tab. And then let's maybe print out a line, Mr. Wright gives you a gold bar in return or something. PR tab. Mr. Wright gives you a gold bar in return. All right, so we've printed that out. Now let's put the gold bar in the player's inventory. Gold underscore bar dot holder equals player. So that's PL tab expands to player. All right, so now we have our function give floppy to Mr. Wright. Now let's go make a sentence to use that. So we'll say when the verb is give and the object is the floppy disk and the preposition is to, and the second object is Mr. Wright, let's call the give floppy to Mr. Wright function, and we'll do that instead of the default action. There is no built-in mechanism for giving something to somebody else. All right, so let's also look at our verb checks here. Let's look at giving. Okay, so we have to, if we give something to somebody else, okay, we have to see the thing we're giving. We have to, yeah, okay, this is all good. We don't have to add any checks here. All right, so let's just test it out. Test, okay. Mr. Wright is here tending to his beloved computers. I am carrying a floppy disk. Give disk to, what if I do Mr.? I wonder if that would work. Mr. Wright says, wow, thanks. I was looking for one of those. Mr. Wright gives you a gold bar in return. And I hit enter, and I am now carrying the gold bar, and I'm not carrying the floppy disk. Now, watch this. So now the thing is, what if I say, give the disk to Mr. Wright again? It's going to say you don't have that. I don't have the disk, so I can't. There's no danger of me doing that a second time because once I gave the thing away, it's now out of the world. I don't have to worry about checking that. But what if I try to give the gold to Mr. Wright? It says, I don't follow you. So why does it do that? Because there's no built-in mechanism for giving. So what we need now is another case here. So like there's the case of giving the floppy disk to Mr. Wright, but then there's the case of giving anything else to Mr. Wright. So I'm going to make another function here, give anything to Mr. Wright. And I'm going to, oh, I guess there's a limit on that. Okay, that's fine. Let me put in print line, Mr. Wright does not seem interested in that. And, okay, so now we've got this function for giving anything else to Mr. Wright, and now let's make a sentence for that. So how do we say anything else, or anything? And that is the star. The star means any object. Give anything to Mr. Wright, call the give anything to Mr. Wright function instead. Now, notice we have two things here, two functions for, or two sentences for giving stuff to Mr. Wright. The way it works is the engine will attempt to find an exact match for what you typed, and if it can, it will call that function. If it can't find an exact match, it will try to find one of these wildcard matches. That's what this star is called. It means kind of match anything. So if it couldn't find it, give floppy disk to Mr. Wright, and then it will say, well, is there a function for just give anything to Mr. Wright? And it says, oh, if there is, okay, call that function. So it tries to find an exact match first, followed by a wildcard match next. So now let's see what happens. Let's launch the player and give floppy to Mr. Wright. Wow, okay, cool. Give gold to Mr. Wright. This is the give anything else to Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright does not seem interested in that. So now we've satisfied both cases. We've handled both situations. The situation where we're trying to give a specific item to Mr. Wright or to our NPC, and we have handled the case where we were trying to give anything other than that to the NPC. Anytime you kind of add your own, like a sentence, you probably want to make sure you've got some sort of logic that handles the kind of the inverse of that. It's like if I kick the can, something special happens. If I kick anything else, it says that would just hurt your toe, right? So, so that's an example of using those wildcard matches. And now you know how to give something to an NPC. I guess one other thing I would do is if you're going to have an NPC, make the NPC, implement talking to the NPC. And there's a whole separate video on talking to characters. So that would be, players, NPCs tend to talk, right? Or if this is an NPC that would be expected to be able to talk, have a conversation, I would implement a conversation system with that NPC. So check the video for that, and I would do that as well.